Hey guys, I am going to walk you through Project 3 and starting that. And this one's going to be a real doozy. So I'm going to show you guys how to model in what's called a 1-point perspective. And for those of you who don't know what that is a perspective image that has one vanishing point. Now, this is different than a 2-point perspective image, which would have two separate vanishing points. And if you like Googled like 1-point perspective pictures and 2-point perspective pictures, you would quickly see what that difference is visually. But basically what Project 3 is you are going to have 4 different images on Karman from the movie Blade Runner, and you're going to be taking those images and you get to pick one and you get to draw in perspective and model in 3D that image. And so what we're going to end with is a flattened 3D object that has a warped perspective that when you look at it from the front, it looks correct. But when you look at it from the sides, it's more distorted and really interesting architecturally. You can also, from my understanding, basically pick any 1-point perspective clip from any movie that you want. But if you do that, you have to have it approved by a GA. So you have to show one of your GAs and they have to give you the go ahead that's make sure it's really a 1-point perspective image and that it can be done this way. But that being said, those images are on Karman in the Project 3 folder. And I'm just going to dive into this and show you guys how to do it. This is probably going to end up being 2 videos, so just be prepared for that. But I digress. Let's get started. So what we're looking at right here is a really basic 1-point perspective image. And this I like a lot. It's been hand drawn, so you can kind of start to see some of the elements that are causing this perspective to occur. And someone was so smart as to draw their guidelines onto this. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to kind of piggyback off of some of these lines to get this geometry that we want, right? So let's start by getting some lines. I have my ortho on. And so we're going to get this line first. This is called a horizon line. And this is the line at which the horizon occurs, right? Pretty simple. This image appears to be rotated just slightly because it looks fine on that end, but not so much on this end. But it's also a hand-drawn scan, so we can attribute some of those irregularities to the scan because we know our thing is perfectly orthogonal. Now, some 1-point images will have their 1-point perspective at any point along this horizon line. This one just happens to be right down the middle. So what we're going to do is we are going to grab that middle line and we're going to draw this line down that way too. And we're going to scale 1D to get this. Now, this obviously isn't one of the images that you are going to be making, but this applies to every single picture that you would have. I refrained from choosing one of the 4 images because we think that if I did that, you would all just pick that because I'm showing you the step-by-step process. So anyways, we have our horizon line and then our vertical midpoint on where the actual endpoint is. So we know that this point in here is actually our vanishing point. And so with that information, we can start to get some lines drawn. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, start to fill in some of the space. And you can see it's not perfect because this image is not drawn perfectly, but we are going to trust the process. From here, we know we can start to just grab our respective lines. And we want everything to be connected to the box that we're drawing. Make sure it's all lined up. I picked an image that was a little warped. I apologize. Now we can scale 1D. Just one at a time, we can start to grab some of these lines that are important to us. Bring them out. If it is helpful to listen to this video and follow along at a faster watch speed, you are more than welcome to do that. The old 1.5 speed, I used to do that when I would have longer videos to listen to. And I think that is a perfectly fine and effective way to go about it. We're going to draw our window box right here. And we really want to, you know what, we are going to want our exterior box as well. Great, so we have a lot of our lines coming in. I'm going to draw our door too. Now, if something is vertical, you 100% want to make sure that that line being drawn is orthogonal, right? Because these lines are going to be orthogonal as we draw them. Let's see. Actually, if we want to make this perfect, let's see what distance this is. About 1/2 inch. So we can take this, offset our distance. We're going to make 0.5, hit enter. There we go. So that's perfectly the same distance all the way around. And let's just grab this line right here. Oops, sorry. There we go. Some of these lines are a little off, and I am going to blame the hand drawing for that. You are going to be using actual photos, so you will not have that issue. Everything should line up. So here is our 2D image with our line work on it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab the single point tool, right? We're going to just take it, and we're going to plop it right in the middle, right there. And boom, that's about what we want to do for our 2D version of this, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into our perspective view. We're going to take this, I'm just going to ZSA to get closer to it. We're going to copy the whole thing. I'm going to move it over here. ZSA. Ooh, and ZSA this one. Oh, we lost our image. So let's take this, copy. Oh, you know what happened? Our layer's locked. I had this on a separate layer, the image. So we're going to take all of it, copy it over, just over here. And then we're going to get over to it, ZSA. And we're going to rotate this up so it's standing up, right? 90. Now we can raise this up a little bit. This is how we're going to start modeling, right? So what we want to do is we can lock our image layer again so we don't grab it and mess it up. We're going to place our point because it looks like I accidentally undid it right there. And we're going to grab it. we're gonna Control C, Control V, copy paste, and then grab our axis that comes straight out this way. And grab a point, basically dragging it straight back. And here's what we're gonna do. Turn on your point snap, make sure it's on. Hit the drop down, set camera, place camera on target. Grab the point you copied, and then grab that point that we placed first in the middle. Boom. What this does, this orients your camera view, right? If I don't know if any of you guys are photographers or familiar with photography, but if you look at your lens length, for example, it's at 50 right now. If you've ever heard of a 35mm camera, that's like the 35 lens length. So if we type in 35, take a peek. And it's still not quite encompassing the whole thing. So we can try 20. And I think that's a little better. And I just want to make sure that this is perfect and it looks really good. You don't want to pan or orbit, or else you'd have to do all this again. So what you want to do is hit this drop down, go down to set view, click named views, and then right here, save as, and we're going to type this as camera. Okay. And so now this is one of our views. And so we can switch in our drop down. When we go to switch views, camera's now an option along with our ISO, perspective, front, right, back, etc. So basically what we want to start doing is we can grab our box tools and we want to start making our walls. And so do you see how this is shifting in perspective? We can snap. It's not quite snapping where I want it to. I'm going to grab perpendicular, turn off end. Interesting. Oh, first, we also want to make sure we are in shaded, or at least, how about ghosted? Ghosted might be a little better. And so you can see how it's like warping in perspective. I'm drawing an orthogonal box, but the way we are modeling is perspectival. And so we can start to make our box goes around. And this is all based on the lines we drew. And I'm not using any particular thickness or anything like that. And we will clean this up afterwards. But this allows us to take what is drawn in perspective and model it correctly. And so this is our back wall back there. It's just behind the image. So you can't quite see it. If I turned off this layer, we've got that back wall there now. Our floor plate. And yeah, we are cooking. We can start to remove our openings, right? So this right here is a box that we want to get rid of. I'm actually going to orbit out because some of these boxes are a little difficult to operate with when you're working in the back. So I'm going to grab this point. I'm actually going to do box from 3 points, because that lets you pick which point you want to start with. We're going to drag that back. And we're going to use scale 1D on a lot of these. Make these a little less ridiculous. I'm going to hide this for a second. I'm just going to line everything up real quick with my scale 1D. Make this a little more realistic. you are just going to be rendering these. Last year, we actually had students model them, and that was a real treat. I'm sure I have some examples I can show you if you're confused as to what these are supposed to look like digitally, but you won't have to build them in real life. I'm just going to take care of it digitally. So we're going to grab all of these and make them all pretty reasonable. Let's see, it looks like we have a bit of a thick roof plate. Just gonna. Now these don't have to be perfect because they're only going to be viewed from one angle. This is just kind of my own OCD at work. I just want this to be really nice. So now I can go back to set view, click camera, and it brings me back to my view. So I can grab this extrusion and I can actually Boolean separate it out. And so that's my window, right? It's right there. Now if we turn this back on, we can see my door. We had drawn our door in right like that. And again, I'm going to use box from 3 points. Just going to grab the top of our door. And it looks like that didn't like that. So we're going to grab this line to this line. And there we go. We're going to bring that out to there. See, and it looks like that is just not cooperating with us. We have this door drawn. So what we want to do is I'm going to go back into our camera, set view, camera, and I'm going to hide some of these wall objects because I believe it's catching some of them. And that's making things a little more difficult. So I'm going to grab some of these, hide them. We're just going to look at our lines. Grab our point, come out here. This is what we want, but it is a little incorrect. So we're just going to scale 1D, grab that, and we're going to bring it back to our door frame. It looks like we want this right here. We're going to go back into our camera. I'm kind of hopping back and forth between the two views. Yeah, this is starting to look a little better. We can start scaling 1D with this. I believe I messed up the perspective a little bit because I see both of these points. So we're gonna, again, look at our camera. And that actually looks pretty great. So I'm gonna unhide object by typing show. We're gonna Boolean out this door. It looks like I didn't cut all the way through. I grab just this, pull through a little bit. So what you see happening is there should actually be, this has to come a little closer. Scale 1B. This can be a little tedious. That's okay. All part of the process. Scale 1B. Again, put this guy out a little bit so it cuts through. And we're going to do our Boolean difference. There's our door. Little tedious there. And what we can do is do the same thing with our window over here that we drew. This one will cooperate a little better. Like, again, cut it a little too far back. Scale 1B. And there we go. Perfect. We can hide this. And so all of a sudden, what we have is we've 3D modeled our 1-point perspective, right? This is the room we started with. And what we will notice when we start to orbit this thing is that it is actually just a box. Like, we've modeled this with the dimensions and proportions based on the perspective that we made with our camera. In reality, it doesn't actually matter how far back this dot is because you're going to adjust the focal length of those numbers, how I showed you. But this is like the setup for our box. What I'm going to show you in the next video is how to cage edit your boxes, your rooms, your perspectives, and that will start to change. That will literally change the geometry to make it look even more like a perspective when it is rendered. So that is how you do that. I'm going to end this here, and then we will keep going in the next video. See you then.